Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Mary O'Reilly, Vice President of Bioscience Research Programs here at the Flynn Foundation. Also joining me this afternoon is Juliet Gomez, our Bioscience Program Manager. We appreciate your interest in our Translational Sea Grants Program and that you have taken the time to join us and learn more this afternoon. We plan to spend the next 20 minutes or so describing the program, how to apply, how grantees are selected, etc. And because we have so many people on this call, if you have questions at any time, please use the chat. We will make sure to answer as many as we can. If we don't get to all of them, we will post the questions and answers in the FAQs on the Sea Grants program of our website over the course of the next week, and we will also send them out to everybody on the call. Let me begin by providing a little background on the program. This program helps to fulfill one of the goals of the Arizona Bioscience Roadmap. The roadmap is Arizona's long-term plan, The roadmap is Arizona's long-term plan to make the state's bioscience sector globally competitive. It was commissioned by the Flynn Foundation and developed by Battelle, a national technology consulting firm in conjunction with statewide science and business leaders. Goal 2 is research into practice, increasing the ability of the research performing institutions to turn bench research results into improved disease and illness prevention, detection, and treatments. The Sea Grants to Promote Translational Research program helps the state reach this goal by funding research projects that focus on creating new products and services to benefit patients. The program has awarded 41 grants totaling $5.3 million to date. And we're looking forward to the 2022 program and to helping to support research to further advance the bioscience industry in Arizona. Up to 10 grants will be awarded for this program cycle. The program supports teams that include both scientists and clinicians affiliated with Arizona-based research institutions and our healthcare systems. Funded projects must focus on bringing new products and services to benefit patients. Projects should address a clearly defined, compelling clinical need in the area of precision medicine, diagnostics, devices, therapeutics, and our healthcare delivery processes. There must be a clear path to move from lab to pre-commercialization phase. This can also be an open source application. We do require a letter of support from the institution's Vice President of Research or equivalent. The principal investigator must be employed by an Arizona-based academic or medical research institution or healthcare system, which will also serve as the PI's grant administrator. The PI's institution must have a qualified 501c3 that can administer the grant. The PI and project team should have the blend of skills, for example, scientific, clinical, engineering, business, and regulatory. So it's really a cross-disciplinary team to ensure that the proposal goals can be met. The PI must identify the proposed use of grant funds, including any matching funds that you may require and acquire. As the PI must agree to participate in grant programming provided by the Foundation in collaboration with others. Up to 10 grants of $100,000 for 18 months will be awarded to teams to de-risk their products or processes, refine their designs, and/or acquire key validation data and stakeholder feedback. They will also secure or have a well-defined plan to secure new sources of funding to advance towards positive patient impact. What's really nice about this program is at the end of the grant cycle, up to 2 of the most successful projects will be selected to receive an additional $100,000 grant over the following 12 months. The teams will have opportunities to connect with experienced research and industry advisors, plus quarterly progress reviews and check-ins. They will have access to workshops to enhance team skill sets in product development and commercialization. They will receive referrals to programs, resources, and product development and product launch expertise. And during the grant period, they will also participate as a member of the Arizona's Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee, a body of high-level bioscience champions in the state. So we see this as a really good opportunity for you to build a stronger network, particularly into the entrepreneurial community that you would need eventually to have to really launch your product. Use of the funds. The PI's home institution will administer the grant. Up to 10% of the funds are allowable for administrative or institutional fees or indirect costs. Flynn Foundation funding can cover or offset expenditures such as program-related lab expenses, materials, support staff analysis, etc., prototype development, testing and validation, animal model tests, publications of data, development and refinement of business plans and customer exploration, development of proposals for follow-on funding from, say, the Small Business Innovation Research Funds, National Institute of Health, angel investments and philanthropic funds, etc. What funds cannot be used for is for salaries, benefits, or compensation of the principal investigators or applied towards prior debt. It may, however, be used to buy down a clinician's time to work on the project. The selected teams will report quarterly and present their progress to scientific and industry leaders. So this is something that is a little time consuming, and you get to sort of present your progress every 3 months. That they will secure or have a well-defined plan to secure new funding to carry the project forward to the real world for real-world impact, and that each team will submit a final report to the Flynn Foundation no later than 45 days after the end of the grant period. Pretty standard in this type of grant. However, if competing for the follow-on funding, and we would have an expectation that all the cohort would do that, the report may be required to be submitted sooner, and there are certain requirements around that. Ideally, prior to the start of the grant period, the PI should have IRB approval and a plan for addressing intellectual property issues with their institution, including ownership and licensing of the technology. Now, Juliet will take over and just talk through the application or how to apply to the problem, how to apply to the program. Sorry about that.
Mary, that's okay. First, if you have any questions all along the process, you can email me at jgomez@flynn.org. All pertinent questions will be added to the FAQs that we will put on our website. As you may know, all of the information about the program may be found on our website at www.flynn.org/seedgrants. Now, to apply for the program, just go to the Seed Grants webpage on our website, and there will be a link to the online application. When you get to the website, you'll have to register, and then you may begin the application. There is an area where you can invite others from your team to have access to the application as well. You can edit your application anytime until the deadline. If you have submitted it and you want to make any edits, just go to the section you want to edit, click on the 3 dots in the upper right of that section and hit edit. You can also download your entire application and all of the materials you submitted. As Mary mentioned earlier, you must submit a letter of support signed by the Vice President of Research of your institution or their designee. The letter of support template is located on the application in the institutional summary section, as well as the Seed Grants webpage. Applicants may also provide up to 5 additional pages of information for consideration. There are areas to upload these documents at the end of the online application. There's no need to upload your resume or CV, as there is a place for you to add your LinkedIn profile within the application. The clearer the information you can provide on the application, the more helpful it will be to the selection panel. So that's a helpful little hint there. The deadline for the application and all required materials is 5 p.m. on Friday, December 3rd. Please remember that you may edit your application as many times as you'd like prior to the deadline. If you have any questions regarding the program, application, process, and eligibility, email them to us. Also, if you have any issues with the application website, please let me know as soon as possible, and I will help you through that. You can also find our contact info at the bottom of the Seed Grants webpage. As appropriate, the responses to questions will be posted to an online FAQ document on the Seed Grants webpage. All potential applicants will have the benefit of the information. Now, all questions except for those of a routine nature must be received at least 7 days prior to the application deadline. Each month, we will hold office hours to answer any questions you may have via Zoom. The dates, times, and links for these meetings will be posted on our Seed Grants webpage. Now I'll turn it back over to Mary to talk about the review process.
Thanks, Juliet. So in regard to the review process, this is the last segment we'll cover before we go to questions. The review process, and as you have questions, sorry guys, just put them in the chat. So we are assembling a broad range of reviewers necessary to effectively review the applications. The review panel will also be geographically diverse, as we will be using some members from outside of Arizona. This will help us sort of to ensure a fair, competent, and objective assessment of the applications based on their scientific and technical merit and clinical application. The panel will score the applications addressing the clearly defined clinical need, technical overview, and market opportunity. The project plan with a clear statement of the project goals and milestones over the grant period, the project team, including clinical partners and other collaborators, the planned use of grant funding, and the institutional summary. Based on the results of the scoring, the review panel will meet to discuss the application and recommend a list of projects to the President and CEO of the Flynn Foundation, Dr. Tammy McLeod, and the Flynn Foundation Board of Directors for final sign-off. We will notify the PIs selected for the program no later than Tuesday, March 8th. And what I would say is, I've listed out here the scoring. We will put a scoring rubric up on our website as we get closer to the date, or within the next 4 weeks. And really, it is every section that's on that application should be filled out with the thought that somebody's going to read it and score that section. So relevance, clarity, all of the standard things that you use when you're writing any grant. The expectation would be it would be here, but also take note. I think it's important to note that while most of the reviewers will be scientifically, strongly scientifically oriented, we will have some reviewers who are more business oriented. So the easier you make it for them, obviously, the better. So just a clear narrative is really what people are seeking. And then really what's super important is just a clearly defined, what is your product going to do and what makes it special? So what makes your approach more special than maybe the current standard of care, the current devices on the market? So what is the compelling reason that people think they should be funding yours? So I will leave you with that. We will go to questions, and I think Juliet has already received some. So
yeah, I'll go ahead and answer the ones that were given at registration. Do you have samples of previous funded projects that you can share, or at least their titles and abstracts? If you go to our Seed Grants webpage and just scroll down, you will see a list of the projects and descriptions of them. Can a faculty member at the same university be a participant on more than one submission? Mary?
Yes. So what I would say, first of all, each of these proposals are going to be evaluated independently. I would say that it'll be hard to see one PI come in as the lead on 2 projects, just purely from the amount of work that they both require. Certainly, a PI could be a co-PI or a member of a team on another proposal. I would see that there would be no issue with that. And there's certainly nothing written in our RFP, which I have a copy here. So you will find this on the website. And that has all the basic information. And then obviously let us know if there's any additional questions. But I would say you could have team members that are across a few projects.
Okay, what is the format for the translational research grant? The number of pages, questions to be addressed. If you go to the application website and register and start your application, you can look at all of the questions before you ever fill out a single answer. So it's not one of those that you have to fill out one question and then hit next. It's all of the questions are visible. So it would probably be a good idea to go through and take a look at all of those before you start.
Yeah, and I would just add, Juliet, that this is not designed to be a very long and detailed application. You're looking at, I would estimate there's about 8 to 10 pages. There is some room at the end for some additional documentation if you think it's pertinent. But again, I would say just clarity is key, clarity and just getting your point across. And even when it comes to things like resumes, we allow people to put in their LinkedIn link or profile as opposed to the link to the LinkedIn profile, or maybe to your lab, rather than having to put in a large resume with all of your publications, etc. Just something pertinent to give people a sense that you have the experience and the knowledge to really drive your project forward.
Okay, now we'll go to the chat. Will the slides be available afterwards? Yes, we will send the slides out to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Are the reviewers under NDA agreements?
Yes, yeah, we have NDA agreements, and then yes, so we do.
And who owns the IP coming out of a Flynn Foundation grant?
Oh, well, that is,
We don't.
Yeah, no, everything you're doing, we're providing a grant, so it's your work, it's your actually, it's whatever agreement you have with your institution as well. So, and our expectation is that you would have looked at your IP strategy, that you would have some indication within the application about what your IP strategy is. You're asked that question, and that also if you expect to have certain IP issues, that you're resolving those with your institution so that there's a clear path to what needs to be done next in order that you control the IP and actually have something that you can either commercialize or license down the road.
Okay, what are the page lengths of each section? As Mary
Yeah,
said,
I can't actually. Yeah, I would say the total application is 10 pages, or thereabouts.
And here again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can start an application and not submit it if you simply want to see what the format is. Yes, that is correct. We won't take any applications until the deadline. I mean, so you can submit it. If you decide you don't want it to be considered, that's fine. You can still start it, but you can edit it and look over it as many times as you want before the deadline. We won't take the final word until 5:01 on December 3rd. Is it okay to have some overlap with other funding, active or pending, from NIH or NSF?
Yeah, so what I would say there is absolutely. So, none of you are like $100,000 or this grant is not for something that's brand new. So you've obviously been working on your research for a period of time and therefore have other grants that have supported that. So this would be seen as an additional funding to help you move that work along. The one question I have, and I certainly don't know, is just make sure that if you are like NSF, I think, and NIH are very clear on the number of hours you spend on the project and how that's associated with the funding you get. So just make sure that you're not sort of double dipping in that, this funding is to help you de-risk, etc., other projects. So I would say, yes, you certainly should be working on, you should have other sources of funding for the work you're doing. And this is just supplemental.
Okay, how are potential reviewer conflicts addressed? First of all, they can bow out by just saying they have a conflict and they won't even see the application. That's one way. And
yeah, and the other I would say is just that we tend to select reviewers that we know that aren't necessarily involved within the university system or the health system. So we're unlikely to have anybody from one of the institutions who will be applying. We try to keep people, from outside the state and others who certainly are knowledgeable in the area, but not necessarily engaged in our institutions.
Okay. For those of us who have spent most or all of our time in the academic research space, what are your expectations for how developed the business plan should be?
Well, so what I would say, and this is the way this program has evolved even at Flynn over time. So in the early days when these grants were being made, it was really about bringing clinicians and scientists together because at the time there wasn't that many opportunities. that has evolved as we see that people really do have research and technologies that are really close to being validated to a point that they could be moved out of the lab. So, we're not talking about research that is still, say, 5 years from let's say, a medical device that you're still thinking about the basic design. You haven't yet made a prototype. We're looking at something that where you have a prototype, you've done some validation, or if you're looking at, let's say, one of our current grantees is doing a patch for rotor cuff repair, and she had samples of the design of the patch, has a good mouse model in which they're testing it, etc. So that's what I would say is you should be there. And if you're there and thinking of licensing it, you should also begin to think about how am I going to do it? What regulatory path I might start to take. So if you're on the call today saying, well, we haven't really done that, my advice is as you think about this application, you begin to explore those areas and you sort of bring them in to your application, working with your tech transfer groups and other groups within the colleges or the health systems. I mean, Banner has an innovation group now, Honor Health is an innovation group. There's lots of people in our environments who can help you sort of put a good application together, and then over the course of the next 18 months, you really focus in and work on those elements of your project so that by the end of it, you're more competitive and actually more serious about de-risking your product so you can take it further. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say the office hours that we're going to have once a month, those will be helpful too. If you have questions about what you're putting on your application, if you think that might work or not, you can join us for those office hours, or you can email us or call us anytime, and we are more than happy to help you because we want winning applications, and so we want to make you guys as I don't know, as have your applications as good as possible. Yeah, successful. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you please explain the relative importance of commercialization potential as a % of total evaluation?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm looking at it, I see it's Ben's question. So Ben, what I would say is that at this point, you don't even have to think, I don't think necessarily about, evaluation or % of total evaluation. What you need to say is, this has a specific market sector that we think we can engage in, and the product we're developing or the process we're looking at is going to be a significant improvement on what's already there. So I would say, again, it's if you're going into, let's say, a knee replacement, and the market is currently today, let's say it's 700 million, and you have a product that has certain advantages, well, then it just says that I'm entering the market at 700 million. My product has this range of advantages, and therefore we're likely to be competitive in that space. So I think it's still, there is a realization that people are still working in the lab. We're still developing the research, and the business plan doesn't necessarily have to be well defined, but certainly people need to be thinking about it.
And also, Mary, do you want to talk about, for instance, the open source issue? So it doesn't have to be making millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you look on our website, where we actually do have all of the projects that have been funded, you'll see them and you'll see the work they're doing. So we do have some projects that are where they're developing, say, software or systems that are going to be open source. There's one particular one, I think Dr. Quirls up at BNI, who's looking at the development of software for scanning brain tumors. And he's developing it so it can be plugged into other scanning systems and therefore more readily available to a wider audience. So that's open source. He's not doing it for profit, but he's certainly doing it to improve access for patients and their opportunity, rather than having a biopsy, to go in and actually just have a scan. So things like that. And that's these are the most important things to Flynn. Flynn isn't necessarily interested in commercialization only. We're interested in making sure that patients have better therapies and access to better healthcare.
Should the research be from different institutions?
No, what I would say is the research, you should have the right team together to drive your research forward. And if that brings in people from different institutions, different departments, collaborations with industry partners, etc., it really is about the team. Have you got the right team?
So does it have to be a potential commercial product, or can we do clinical studies of other nature, say, develop a rehabilitation protocol with an existing device?
Yeah, I think I'd have to see a little bit more clearly what you're thinking about. So if you think that you're developing something that has to have a market or be adopted, well then if what you're talking about is a shift in a protocol that has a significant likelihood of improvement and adoption, well then that, one could argue that that's, a compelling clinical need. I think you'd have to argue, you'd have to show the relevance, because I think when we think about it a lot, we think about like precision medicine, we think of a diagnostic, we think of a medical device, but that's what we're thinking about. But you're going to tell us like what is the compelling clinical need and why your product or process is better than something else that's currently available. So we could discuss that offline, maybe a little bit more, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. But that's what I would say today.
Okay, will the recording of this session be available in addition to the slides? Yes. If we can send it out, at least the slides we will. Otherwise, both the slides and the recording will be available on the Seed Grants webpage. In the event there is not a VP of research, what are other options for the letter of support? Yeah,
well, then your VP of research or equivalent. So given that your institution will be the administrator of this grant, then you just need to demonstrate that the institution are happy to do this, and they're also going to be supporting you in this effort. So it's whoever at your institution is the right person to sign this. And then, again, just for a little clarity, it might be worth just letting us know that in advance that, we're not likely to see the VP of research, but we might see a dean or somebody else, and just explain to us in an email, maybe in advance, and just so that we're not caught unaware. But I think most institutions we're looking at do have VPs of research. However, I certainly don't want to rule out any other institutions who don't.
Okay, are you looking for grants from academic institutions or from startup companies? If a startup who signs a required letter of support, if a startup, who signs the required letter of support, the CEO or COO? Yeah, so this program is not funding startups. We actually run a separate program for startup companies, and Juliet is getting ready to launch the RFP on that, which will come out over the next couple of weeks. So this is designed really for bringing scientists, clinicians, and researchers together to get their, what's happening in the lab out a little bit more, or out into commercializations or licensing. So I would say this is not for startups, but it's not to say that we're not interested in startups. We are, but in different programs. Are there salaries other than the PI that can be paid for, such as assistants or technologists? Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, that the salary of a PI cannot be paid for in this, because they're already aligned or assigned salaries through their institutions, but you can pay for lab assistants or others within the project team. So again, PI salaries are not covered by this grant. The one exception, and it's not salary, is that where if you have a clinician who needs to buy down some time to work on this grant, then that is an allowable cost. And it looks like we have answered. We have Faye Farmer from ASU. For ASU folks, the routing for the VPR signature procedure will be posted at funding.asu.edu and distributed to RAs. No problem, Faye. That's fine. Thanks, Faye. Does anyone else have any additional questions? If not, we are available, so please feel free to email us and we will make sure we get your questions answered. You have plenty of time before the deadline. So. Yeah, and one of the nice things about this sort of, let's say, how these grant programs have evolved is
In the past, Flynn, like many places, just provided grants and really didn't, there wasn't a huge amount of interaction between Flynn and the grantee. Flynn does, because of the Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee and just our connections across the universities and just in industry, does have a sort of a network, and we've decided that it really should be, we should be leveraging that side of what Flynn does with our grantees, so that we can actually maybe help you build stronger networks, etc., or bring additional expertise, or help you refine some of the skill sets that would be needed to actually bring a product to market, which is like super complex and requires like a large number of people and a lot of assistance to do. Our job really, we see it as just doing what we can just to make sure that by the time you finish the grant period, that you have some new skills that allow you just to think, shorten the time frame to do this, or just even think more seriously about, actually taking your product further, getting it to a point where you can license it and hand it off more easily, etc. So
I think if that is it, I think we are finished. Thank you, Chris, for that. We are happy, and we're looking forward to seeing all of your application.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is great, and there's great work going. So we really are excited to be supporting the work that's happening across the community.